discover what's going on here. He said, when most people try to determine the reasons for their anger, they always point to the external pressures. My spouse is uncooperative, my parents neglected basic needs, my job is stressful, finances are in shambles, it goes on, my friends don't know how to relate to me, children are rebellious. He said they do create anger, but they do not tell the whole story. So we're going to dig into this. A lot of anger is due to self-inflicted wounds. Though the environment may, in fact, present difficulty, we all have a free will to manage our adult lives. Some of us perpetuate our own anger by making poisonous choices. So I'm just trying to discover where he's coming from with this. We acknowledge our world, acknowledge that our world today can feel unfriendly or insensitive. But he says, interesting to note, though, that many of the people who complain loudest about their exposure to unfairness are their own worst enemies. For instance, a father may complain that politicians are stubborn and out of touch with the people, yet that same man may be stubborn and closed-minded with his own family members. Or a man that states that he needs to become less agitated with his friends, but instead of developing habits that increase in interpersonal sensitivities, he watches cage fighting, TV shows, spend hours playing violent video games. Likewise, a mother may rule the fact that she pops off too quickly toward her children. Now this one gets real, okay? Yet she won't miss an episode of reality TV depicting women backbiting and insulting each other. They are popular for a reason, right? So similarly, a person may feel commute time in their car listening to the radio that clearly encourages arguing or the expression of unbending options. So he said, he asked him, we getting it basically. He said, it is easy to say, yes, life would be more enjoyable if I could be less angry, yet we often hinder our own progress by making choices that fertilize the very anger we want to get rid of. So we're getting this idea what he's talking about hope, right? So far, good. So we're going to determine, as we try to determine, he said, be aware that emotion does not arise out of a vacuum. And I think that's a very powerful statement. When something comes out of my mouth that shouldn't come out of my mouth, there's something that is going on that causes that. It's not like it just happened. There's got to be something that's been built up or something that's in there that causes that to happen. I think that's what he's referring to here. When we just blow our top, it seems like it just didn't happen. There's something that's burning or fueling on the inside, that's for sure. There's a cause for it, a cause that brings it on. It's anywhere, sure enough, the world around you can provide many reasons for you to feel tense and agitated. But you cannot change what others say and do. Your energies will be best spent in examining the one person who can make a major difference in your quality of life, and that person is yourself. Wow, I put a star by that. Anyway, we're going to talk about this guy called Steve. He's got chronic fatigue and headaches. He's been to several medical doctors. He came to the same conclusion. Y'all help me read into this. Make sure I don't just read more. Try to help me on this one. Because more of us think about what he's saying, because he's got a lot to say. So anyway, medically, they were telling him they were sound, but emotionally, you are your own worst enemy. Have you ever run into somebody like that? They were their own worst enemy. Well, I think that's probably pretty common. So that's what this guy was. So that's one of his reasons for seeing this doctor. And he described the symptoms of physical sluggishness. And then, of course, the doctor talked about his emotional ups and downs. He said, how much time do we have? And then he said, I live with one frustration after another for so long, I hardly know where to begin. So he said during his childhood, basically on 99 there, he had a reasonably good childhood, happy kid. But when he got about 20, getting established and going. He says, I guess you say I didn't want to grow up. I had good jobs, but none ever lasted very long. I was only interested in wine, women, and song. He said, I had quite a reputation as a free spirit. The doctor asked about being married. He didn't get married. He said, I was married once for about 10 months. In his early 20s, he was wrong from the start. He said, I don't even know why. So you can see this was going on. A few years later, married again. It lasted about 7 years. Got a divorce. His wife caught him fooling around. So we're getting to learn a little bit about this Steve fellow. So again, he said, we had a boy who's now 16 or 17, but they live in another state, so I don't see them much. Been 3 years since he had seen his son. So he got stuff building up here. As he talked to the doctor agreed that Steve was correct when he said he didn't want, that Steve was correct, as he thought, the doctor came to agree that Steve was correct when he stated he did not want to grow up. Okay. He refused to take seriously any long-term responsibility, the result of financial strain, many broken relationships, moral bankruptcy, spiritual emptiness. So we're getting the picture, I guess, here. I know we've all seen this happen. You just see people who take no responsibility and all this stuff starts happening to them. Anyway, he said, you came because you want to sort out your emotions related to your physical ailments. And I'm going to be very frank with you. My impression is that you brought on most of your frustrations yourself because you want to bend the rules to fit your monetary cravings. And he says, it will be hard to find stability until you make adjustments in some of these habits. And we've all been there. I guess we've all been around some folks that sometimes you just want to shake them. But, yeah, you can't because that's not Christian. Yeah, inside, you want to shake them, but on the outside you can't. Anyway. Well, you could, yeah. Just make sure you got a mask on, it's dark. Yeah. Right. I get that. Right. What you learn in church.
Church or what?
Let's just take a step at a time. Don't go too far. Okay. Go to church right now. All right. So one says, I know you're right. I've just got to decide if I really have the willpower to adjust. I get that. Of course, he's not only bringing us alone and bringing anger into life through poor personal choices. I mean, I had the same hedonistic, did I say it right, tendencies. I know what it means. I don't know if I can pronounce it, but it just means that prodigal son lifestyle, that's what I call it. Just want to live for the day, blow with money on, like he said, wine, women, song, whatever. Anyway, he said that you may be able to relate to self-sabotage. And here's what we're going to look at. And so we're going to spend this chapter looking at some of the things where, some of the things that are this self-sabotaging thing. And the first one we're going to look at moral decline. Are we good so far? It's really kind of simple, I guess, in a way, but if we need to stop here and kind of get a grip of what we're doing, because make sure everybody kind of feels like you got a good feel for what's being said. If so, we'll move on. Let's see. Page 100. We're talking about moral decline. Morals decline. Again, the anger is linked to, when we remember that anger is linked to preservation, a personal worth needs conviction. It is safe to say frustrated people are searching for affirmation. Ain't that something? Okay? And when that affirmation is found through wholesome fellowship, anger is reduced. But too many people perpetuate their anger by compromising their morals to gain acceptance. Yeah. So, in short term, some satisfaction is felt, but over the long term, immorality and emotional turmoil go hand in hand. That's it. No, there's no peace to the wicked, the Bible says. I read Isaiah, and so many times in Isaiah, there is no peace to the wicked. There are several chapters right together. At the end of the chapter, there's no peace to the wicked. And that's what, it's kind of like, we want God, we want all the blessings, but we don't want to be responsible. And we think, well, and I don't know, it really kind of like, I'm like that guy that preached last Tuesday night at camp meeting. People got it upside down. I think so too. I'm surprised when people want to pray, or they don't even think about God, and they'll just any kind of way they want to. Then when something happens, they don't understand why life has been unfair to them. Why things go wrong. And I want to think, well, if you give me a minute and listen to me, I would tell you, but most of the time they won't listen. I found that out. And that's what kind of amazed me about this chapter. This guy ain't listening very well at all here either on the first. Anyway, after talking to the doctor initially, Steve begins the intensive counseling with the Dr. Carter. They discuss the symptoms, examine his personal history. On the early session, the doctor remarked, Steve, you've come to our clinic because you know we are Christians. Yet I detect a lot of non-Christian philosophy in your lifestyle. You seem to be at odds with your beliefs. That's what I'm talking about. This is good stuff here to kind of help you maybe deal with some people that you know. He said, well, I do believe in God. But my problem is that I want someone that I can see and touch to tell me I'm okay. God is too abstract. So you decide to place your hope in people. That's risky because they may not be on God's side. And of course, he said he understood. And he said, I can see how I got myself in a lot of hot water because I compromised my values. Thinking about a lot of teenagers, how they start out just wanting to get along. They compromise their values. And I guess I don't have the patience to trust God's guidance. There's a lot of good stuff in here. I guess that's what it really comes down to. Sometimes with the Lord, ain't it? We pray and we don't have the patience. So we'll take things in our own hand. I think that's what he's saying here. Just kind of, decide God ain't listening and move. But anyway, there's several, they talk about his moral episodes of moral decline. He regularly associated with the nightclub crowd. He had a history of promiscuity, pornography use. All goes hand in hand. His social style was laced with frustrating relationships with unreliable peers. And all this gave him short-term thrills, but long-term aggravation. Thank you. That strawberry cake has really got my tongue sticking in places. Well, it was a good cake. So one of the goals is reducing anger and stress. He said your morality would be a good place for us to start. You're creating more frustration than you are eliminating. So he gives a checklist. Now, if y'all get 6 or more of these tonight, we will have an altar call. Okay? After I read the list, you'll know why. So we just look through it. Now, if they're agreeable, we'll have an altar call. But we'll go up. He says, first thing is, I cling to lustful thoughts and fantasies more often than I would like. Okay. I find myself skeptically questioning moral rules of living. You can see how this is coming out. There are times when I feel like two separate people, a public good person and a private conniving person. Going to church is more than a ritual. It's more of a ritual than a true purposeful, I'm telling you, that cake has got me, I think, experience. So y'all got it. I am entertained by crude humor and sordid stories. Well, I won't preach on that for a minute, but that's morality. With God, be proud. All right. I know that a more traditional manner of living would be probably good for me, but I hesitate to live that way. Short-term desires are often override long-term wisdom. See? I entertainment that does not place a value on human dignity.
What does that mean? Like, I mean, I know what all of it means, but like, in what way? How?
Open floor. What do y'all think? What's that?
Say it again.
Okay.
I'm drawn toward entertainment that does not place a value on human dignity. So is that like watching porn? Or
Could be violence.
I think all video games.
Yeah.
Video games, such as some.
And all these violent movies that are on now, you know, just for one side, just decimate the other side.
What if they're true crime though? That's got violence.
Well, that's true. That's
But
Why
like,
are you
like
interested?
48 hours?
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. I'm not interested.
what
I can't say anything, I like crime.
I have a lot of true crimes and stuff like that.
Just in case you need to know
Don't even-
how to do this in case.
Well, that could be as simple as certain news broadcasts or magazines too, because
Yeah.
they throw away human dignity for more curiosity. And
Yes,
they
it's
very
can
broad.
tell privacy for them.
Yeah.
I think I'm pretty good.
And they make you, news makes you angry. They do it to a point to aggravate people. What it
Yes.
is. If you believe any of it. If you believe any of it.
Somebody, you
Well done.
don't hear the good side of what's going on, you always hear the negative side. And, you know, that's depressing.
Rule of thumb is don't believe nothing that you hear, and only half what you see.
I've heard that.
Yeah.
I almost think it's a good rule.
That's fact.
Another thing that comes to my mind is the way sometimes some of the, even like the TV shows will portray women.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You're entertaining your brain with that.
It's pretty common, some of the stuff is, my mind thinks about it even to the point where it's nothing to watch a program. Man, woman fall in love, and they're not married nothing, and they just go
Right.
sleep together like it's nothing.
Immediately.
I mean,
If you stick to westerns, you won't see that.
no, you may see them kill somebody and all that kind of stuff, but, you know, steal, rob, and
Yeah, but when they get shot,
They're dead.
they ain't no blood. I mean, I see them get shot in that. And they fall down and they ain't a drop of blood.
and that makes it so much better.
I know.
I know. But it makes it
Not
righteous.
as many killings on the westerns as there is in Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. He kills more in 1 minute than they do in a week.
Oh, mercy.
Doesn't it say something about us though, what we watch,
Yes.
what we listen to? You know, what we like to watch, you know, is all of the gore and all of the sin and all of the negative things. That says something about us, something's not right, if we would even desire to do those things, to watch that.
I agree.
Yeah.
I can say one thing. Before Dorn and I started going to church, it was nothing for me and him to sit down and watch a show where there were all kinds of filth on that show. But since we've been going to church, we don't there's so many shows that are on that we would have normally watched, that we're like, man.
Yeah. Same.
I mean, we watched, what was it? Patrick Swayze movie.
Roadhouse.
Roadhouse, right?
I heard of it, yeah, I won't.
We decided, well, we're gonna watch Roadhouse. We turned that on, and then within the first 10 minutes or 20 minutes of the show, he was cussing, there was all this cussing, and I looked at him, I said, you remember that being in there? But we were so accustomed to those words that we never paid attention to them.
I don't mind to it. I see people like, I'll see that. I see it happen a lot, don't even think about it.
I tried to watch Forrest Gump after after being saved, and I couldn't do it because of all the, I mean, they say GD 25 times within the first 20 minutes. And I didn't remember it being like that before. You can't even watch the classics
No.
because the Holy Spirit just won't let you. You're so convicted. And then all the shows now, all the cute shows that are on, there's always homosexuality in it.
Oh,
Yes.
Every show we watch, I mean, even early daytime where little kids are watching it too.
Yes.
Yeah, commercials.
Commercials
everything.
even.
It's got them all in it.
Yeah, kids shows are sneaking in.
Yeah, they do, they do.
And you know, you gotta watch out for the cussing, nudity, sexual immorality, but you also gotta they downplay Christianity or make fun of preachers or church or, religion.
Yes.
All that just seems like if you, if you believe it and you're not very intelligent, that's for the naive and simple, or they play it down real bad. I try to watch out for stuff like that too.
So if we continue on with whatever those things are that we used to watch or listen to, what we do is I think that we start getting used to the dark, and so we don't, become, our conscience then doesn't bother us as much. It hinders our growth as a Christian. It's another time. So I'm gonna start going on.
Takes away from the new person when you get saved, you are different, other things pass away. It's not just television. You can't even read a good book half the time now. They fill it up with cussing and everything else. So it's just
And, I
outside coming in.
thought about children too. One of the things I run into a lot of parents don't think nothing about is all these horror movies and the kids watch it and all the gore.
Yes.
And I can't help believe that's got to be demonically influenced. Somebody would think that way or could write something that gory. It's got to be a demonic kind of thing going on.
It's also the cussing and everything in those horror movies.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all of it.
There's some.
To my grandson this weekend. Yesterday, he just watching a little for little kids. And I kept thinking, but it was like a little cartoon character, but he was talking so fast and he was talking funny because it's cartoon. And I thought, it hits like I thought he did it. And he said about 10 times, I thought, well, I was like, I don't know when you're watching this because I think that's what he was saying. And I thought, my goodness, this is for little kids.
Yeah. I've heard people talk about that a lot. You have to watch all this, even though it's supposed to be for kids.
I read a story today where they're allowing gay people to come into libraries to read to small children. And this Catholic group was telling about it. That person would dress up like a nun and just talk trash and everything else in front of these kids. Well, they came in and caught that person at it, and they rebuked her or something, I don't remember. But anyway, she went crazy, started trying to take her clothes off and stuff. They called 911, and now they won't allow anything like that. But, sometimes you just have to make a stand. They had heard about it,
Yeah.
and they went in there.
Well, yeah. I think that's a lot to be thinking on that. We talking about
Oh, yeah.
the things
So
that we,
sad.
human dignity and how they let's see. There are people in my inner circle who entice me to turn my back on virtuous living. Okay,
Okay, Jewel.
I'm on one-on-one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there are people in my inner circle. Yeah, people in my inner circle who entice me to turn my back on virtuous living. I have to struggle to maintain purity in my sexual habits. I have to struggle to maintain, okay. Cutting corners in my responsibilities easier now than it was 5 years ago. I'd rather spend a hedonistic night out on the town than a quiet evening at home. This, you can see plainly this is immoral kind of living.
Yeah.
It says, I have several social relationships that begin with a thrill, but I have had, several social relationships that begin with a thrill, but end in frustration. So like I said, if you check 6 or more, just go straight to the altar.
Why don't you check them all?
If you check them all, brother, I don't know.
Take the
We're
fast track.
we like to rebaptize you and everything. There we go.
I was just kidding.
Oh, I'm serious, bro. I'm serious tonight. We'll break out the heavy artillery on this.
Yeah.
There we go. Anyway, again, the question that the world's asking, he says, what does moral purity have to do with emotions? And many assume that promiscuity or carousing is just plain fun. So why all the fuss? Now, I like what he says. He breaks it down. Moral purity is more than a code of acceptable and unacceptable behavior. Ultimately, morality is a reflection of our respect for others. showing that respect. I mean, we had a lady today, we walked into the restaurant, the spot, and Sissy had a chair, you know. She come and opened the door for Sissy, and I was like, well, I'll get it, you know. And of course, she had her daughter there, and she's, oh, we're glad to do it, we gotta wait anyway. She says that I want my daughter to learn how to respect people. So it's still out there, yeah. So it was good, you know. Anyway, it illustrates our belief in the dignity of human beings. For example, whenever a man or woman pursues someone with the intent of engaging in extramarital sex, some form of manipulation will be used. Now, if you think about it, that's true. First impressions may create the appearance of care and friendliness, but because the behavior is void of a lasting commitment, it isn't true, propelled by what's in it for me mindset. And it is. Eventual rejection certainly is a certainty. Human dignity is overlooked, and maintaining purity in sexuality represents a commitment to respectfulness and consideration. And it does. You know, I got to think about when I read it. The Lord knows what's good. We make a commitment to one another, you know, and that out of that commitment and everything. I heard someone said, you know, if you've ever done the marriage counseling, but you know, I talked about his idea of love was meeting each other's needs. And you make a commitment there, you know, that's so much better. Of course, the world ain't worried about commitment. They're just in it for the pleasure for a moment. But again, we're moving on to what he's saying. The same can be said for a life of partying, general hedonism, hedonism, whatever you call
What
it.
does that mean? Yeah.
It's just a loose lifestyle. It's like, again, the prodigal son when he blowed all his money on the
Righteous.
partying, women, whatever, you know. And that's what it's talking about. Just wasteful, extravagant, you know, just that kind of thing. Anyway, so again, for a while it can seem harmless and fun, but behind the scenes of this lifestyle is the question: who cares about human dignity? And he says, as this continues, an unsettled feeling of emptiness can build inside the individual and eventually feeds emotional tension and restlessness. It just does something to your soul, doesn't it? It just empties you out. You know, you almost get to a place of getting numb and unfeeling and everything else. A moral balance is anchored in purpose and meaning. The primary focus is a loving, uplifting presence toward others. Okay, that's the balanced life. Purpose and meaning. Loving, uplifting people. Immorality, however, gives people a sense of meaninglessness, since its primary focus is instant gratification at the expense of a long-term contentment. This then begins the question, why am I so dissatisfied? Frustration predictably emerges at the emptiness of immorality of these people wandering through life with no overarching plan for inner peace. So that's what happened. He's explaining right plain why all this happened. So God knows what's best. When he set up the morals and the values, he knew exactly what we needed. And that's why we should trust the Lord. And again, I think that part of the maturity knowledge when you begin to really see this for what it's worth. You know, I tell people all the time about, you know, we're living together, there's no difference, it's just a piece of paper. No, there's a whole lot more than that. It really is. And if you can't find someone who can't make that kind of commitment, they don't need to be in your life. But when you can find somebody to make that kind of commitment, then they love you with the right kind of love. You know, they're willing to do what's right. And just looking over the back of the years, Cece and I have been married 48 years. I've been teasing and said it's not about love so much anymore, it's about having a record, you know. In 48 years, so maybe we'll have a chance to beat the record, world's record, wherever it is. But anyway, but you know, looking over back, I see if you do the right things that God says, you just see how it establishes a good, happy home. Your children grow up in an atmosphere of love. And, you know, of course, we've had our dealings with Josh, and when he and Dana broke up, and the back and forth with kids and stuff, and it's so hard. And when you can have a mom and dad that's committed, they love the Lord and doing the right thing, the home life is so much better. Everybody's so much happier. God knows what he's doing. He knows what we need in our life. But again, he goes on. He said, over the years, there's been times when I've slowed down long enough to ponder who I am. I'm ashamed to say sometimes I feel disgusted with myself. But instead of incorporating a moral ethic, I eventually go back to my carousing. So this is what the doctor says: I suspect your impatience keep you from implementing more conservative values. Now, I've seen this a lot in church too. People start out on the right foot, but that, first week or 2, 3 weeks, whatever, things going pretty good. But then when things start happening some, and that routine and staying with it, and you'll start seeing some of them fall by the wayside. They don't stick with it, and you know what's happening. Something new, you'll stick with it. After a while, that impatience, wait on God, okay? But that's part of it. He said, first it will feel awkward to tone down your wild ways, yet moral purity can feel very rewarding as you enjoy the clean conscience it produces. You'll not regret it. So I don't know it needs a lot of explanation here. I think we all can see, probably reflect on our lives when we made bad choices, when we made good choices, and the consequences, how we felt. I've seen, I've heard a lot of people talk about the coming church. The home gets a lot of peace in it. Things are a lot better. Things are going better in their marriage and with the kids. Everybody seems happier. But the time that some of the people get out of church, and it just goes back to torment. The fussing, the fighting, and all that goes back into play. So, yeah, I can see where people selfish. That's what they're doing, being selfish. And whenever you're selfish, I gotta quit because I'll start preaching here in a minute. Because I think I've been running in some stuff here lately. I thought I was bad. I thought, Lord, I need some lessons, But then the Lord will be running some folks that really, you start seeing self-centered. They really are, and they can't think of nobody else. Their thoughts won't go, or won't go much that way, It's all about them, the whole thing, And if people like that I watch them, they're very emotionally stressed. They're just like always, because they're constantly having to be fed, or something always got to be constantly all about them. If they don't get that, it'll happen for them. Anyway, what do y'all think? Y'all want to try to move on, or questions, thoughts? Are we getting it pretty good? I know it's pretty simple so far, but it's a good one to go through. We would challenge another one. Is there another thing that sabotages? We good? Okay. We're going to skip the work becomes all-encompassing, because that's very convicting. So we just go, let's go to something that gets somebody else besides myself. Anyway, here we go. I know it. I read it close and said, that could be me. Let me see if I can find a loophole somewhere to let me off the hook. I found a little relief in 1 or 2 statements, but I thought, well, okay, right, you got to face what's there. Since creation, work has been an integral part of human existence. The work of the first man, Adam, was in keeping the garden, overseeing God's creation. The task was not given to Adam for negative reasons, but for positive ones. God knew Adam would derive a feeling of purpose for assisting the Lord and maintaining his surroundings. We feel healthy pride. I thought that was a good term. Healthy pride as we survey our accomplishments at the end of each day. We find intrinsic rewards when we busy ourselves with productive activities ranging from managing a household to performing manual labor to running a multi-million-dollar enterprise. Work is necessary for personal well-being. Yet, as fruitful as work can be, it's not life's ultimate aim. So he talks about a surgeon who talked to him one time. He says, retired surgeon, he says, I feel as if I have absolutely no usefulness anymore. I'm so frustrated now than ever. And as they started talking about it, I guess, he said, I've given all my energies to being the finest surgeon I could be. I was proud of my reputation as the best in my field. But in the end, I got to wonder if it really was worth it. I have no one I can call a true friend. My wife and I have nothing in common. Wow. We got no hobbies. He says, I guess I've been a one-dimensional person, and now I'm paying the consequence. Anybody relate? Okay. The doctor is telling this, he felt angry because of a self-inflicted wound. He had made work his God. Relationships were a distant second on his priority list. Spiritual vigor was something he had intellectualized, but was not real to him. It was all about his work. When people are consumed by work and business, they typically describe themselves as stressed. Hold on to your seatbelt. He's fixing to tell us something about stress. He says it's been used in such a vague, catch-all term that it deflects us from recognizing the anger that is a part of it. With it. Now, I've had people talk about being burned out, talk about stress. Clue. You got something out of balance. Does that make sense? Just mark it down. You might not know what it is, but it's out of balance.
Yeah.
I get on my lawnmower and I hear a noise under my deck, and it's not the noise it's supposed to be. I better stop and look, because something's wrong. I may not have put my hand on it at first, but I better get off and check it out. Same way with this here. When you're stressed or you're burned out, I always say when people are burned out, it's an indication they're doing it on their own without the help of the Lord. They're not depending on the Lord, the strength of the Lord, especially in ministry and that kind of thing. You know, I find that to be true, because just like oil in a kerosene, or like a kerosene in a lamp, if it runs dry, you're going to burn the wick. So you've got to have the fuel that keeps us going, and we're not, according to him, you know, working, overworked, stressful people are angry. I underlined it, no compromise, it's just what it says. Okay? Altar open already. They may not always shout out and scream, but they nurse a growing sentiment that life lacks the zeal it should have. Personal needs are left wanting. The net result is the presence of traits that are associated with anger. Easy annoyance. Don't. When I say these words, just keep it to yourself if it hits a nerve. Okay? Easy annoyance, irritability, impatience, and the like. So there are times on Sunday night, I have to just say, Rowdy, go to bed. I mean, my body sometimes be shaking. I've had my legs be so restless that I can't get comfortable. I've had a long day. It's been stressful mentally, even spiritually in a way stressful. You know, I say stressful, I don't call myself necessarily being angry, I just wore out, just tired. And sometimes that little snap in conversation, that little edge about it, everything bothers you. I remember working with Coca-Cola. I had a stressful job, and I think I was 25 years old when I realized it. I was selling, so I had to be nice to everybody. I want to sell Coca-Cola. That's my job. That's how I did it. By the time I got home, I was snapping at everybody, snapping at Josh. She was just a kid, snapping at Sissy. And one evening, I saw that, and like the Lord made me see myself for a second. And I thought, okay. Then I realized this. And the question in my mind, I asked myself, how can I be nice to everybody else all day long, and I come home to the people I love the most, and be snapping at them, and not treat them that very well? And so I learned that Yeah, I had to get my mind back balanced a little bit. I was letting my job. I don't know if the ladies do this, guys, or it's really easy for us to get all caught in our work. Women worry about security most of the time. Got enough money in the bank, can put food on the table, buy some clothes. Security, gonna pay the utility bill, right?
And I think
Amen. That water bill.
that wasn't my problem.
Well,
I
it
had
may be,
different kind of stress.
okay. And but it's a general rule.
Yeah.
Men like to be significant. We want to be somebody. So that's in our job. We find our identity, what we can do. If we excel somebody else, if we're number one or whatever, that's kind of gets us where we want to be. You know, it's kind of a significance. You know, be somebody. And so, again, that's why some guys spend everything they make just so that they look like they're big shots or something. You know. And of course, the wife just wants food on the table. But anyway, that's what I'm talking about. So anyway, overwork can be part of that. To remedy the frustrations, we need not to go to extreme excessive play. Don't go the other way. Need balance. This means that you nurture a relationship and you limit regarding activities. And limits regarding activities are enforced. He gives us some examples. A hardworking dad can take time out in the evening to play a board game with his children. Remember the show Nanny? I kind of like that show a little bit. And these unruly kids. The mom and dad were too busy with their careers to have time for the kids. But she showed them how to go out in the backyard and have a little fun with them. Not, spend some time with them, and the kids' behavior started changing. I remember those shows. I thought that was pretty good, and that's what he's saying. He can take out time to play a game, remind him of satisfaction found in family bonding. You got a Harriet mother who can tell the children she is capable of driving them to limited numbers of activities. They will have to choose which activities receive her attention. That's a common problem. They want to do everything that all our kids holler, and we want to do it all for them. And no, we can't, So you have to give them, use balance. Or an office worker can acknowledge that her world will not collapse if she regularly goes home at 6 o'clock. She will vow to resume her work as soon as she gets back to her desk the next morning. I think that's a good one too. Learning how to leave work at work and pick back up in the morning. Sometimes you can do that. Sometimes, most of the time, if you try, you can make it. I've got this thinking about. We was telling somebody the other day. I don't know why I said this, but it come to my mind. It's just funny that happened to us. But when I got to be the district sales manager, and they was making a transition, and Memphis was the headquarters, but they kept me in the office there at the house. I was on call all the time, Coca-Cola and stuff. So I was gone out one day, just probably buying something I needed. Well, I was gone, Cece was at the house, and this guy from Atlanta calls. And he says, I got someone called in for service repair on one of the piece of equipment. Says she's calling for a Rowdy Davis. I said, yeah. You could tell when he signed it, didn't even sure about the name, So I said, yeah, that's my husband, but he's not here. Well, can you get a message? Yeah, I said, well, I got a message from a baby doll Mott's. Yeah, the name is messing with this guy. Her name was. They actually named her baby doll Mott's. I had a lot of, being a preacher, I had fun with that because I knew the lady well enough. And so when I walked into the subway there, if I had one of the new guys with me, I'd just come to the door and say, hey, baby doll, like that, And they look at me like with eyes like big saucers. What's the preacher talking about? It was a lot of fun. So he goes and tells what the need is. And he says, by the way, who am I talking to? She said, this is Sissy. I can only imagine what that guy's day was like after that. And we laughed about it so much. He really hit a hick town, didn't he? My goodness. Anyway, I thought that was funny. We laughed so much. Okay, let's see. He said, one alcoholic sales representative complained, your advice about limited work sounds good in theory, But you are naive if you think a person in my position can really cut it back on it. I like the doctor's statement,
Yeah.
but I think he was cutting on this one. He was pointing on this one. I don't know if y'all got paid for it or not, but he's a good thought, good thought. He said, what you're saying is commonly expressed by people before they have a stroke or a heart attack. It's amazing, though, how they change their tunes after open heart surgery. I'm encouraging you to slow down now so your body won't give you the more drastic message a year or two from now. I like that. But it's to the point, isn't it? Again, I won't go any further. But, yeah. I think what helps me, I think anger and being out of control and everything is definitely gives a red flag. We have to ask, I keep thinking, my clue is, why am I acting this way? Why is my anger? And stuff like that. I got one more thought, and I'll let you go. I've told this a bunch of times, so y'all may have heard this, but if you have, pretend that you haven't, and it'll be about as effective as it was the first time. But anyway, I remember having a dream one night, and in my dream, I was at a house, and for some reason I had gone into a big study, and in front of me was a guy in a wheelchair, and for some reason I took both hands and I shoved him as hard as I could. He went back in the wheelchair and went right into the fireplace. He's burning up. The next thing, I know it sounds strange, but when he fell into that, and all of a sudden I'm watching, this black cat comes out of the fire. And it's just, you could tell that in my dream the cat was just like wild-like and really untamed, just crazy acting. And it run out of the room and went out the door. And when I followed it, and when I went, it was just like a blank space. All I can say, but it was 3 chairs. And then that black cat came and jumped in the first chair. And then I noticed he jumped into the second chair. He changed colors. He went from black to red. And then when he went from the second chair to the first chair, he turned white. And the Lord gave me the message. I had pushed myself too hard. I was the guy in the wheelchair, and I had pushed myself so hard trying to work and get everything done. And that the black cat represented the worst of my personality was coming out because of it. In the 3 chairs, I took a little hint from the Bible. I said, 3 chairs, maybe 3 days. Maybe the Lord telling me I need to take about 3 days rest. And I did. I took me 3 days rest. I just kind of I don't know how I did it, but I got out of the way and, just rested. And sure enough, I felt like my old self once it was over. So I do know that people can push themselves so hard. Coca-Cola, they get everything out of you that they can possibly get out of you. And then they want more.
Exactly.
And I learned a long time ago, they'll take everything I get, and then when I kick over, have a heart attack, they could care less.
Put somebody else like that.
Yeah. So I made my mind, I gotta take care of myself, because they ain't gonna take care of me.
See,
That's
that's
do
what-
not give them, they want
Yeah.
everything plus.
That's what I meant when I said that kind of stress wasn't on my mind.
Yeah.
It's just you work, and the more you work, the better you did. They just kept,
They want you more.
and then if you said, no, I can't do this,
Yeah.
they don't mind telling you you don't have a job.
Well, they would tell Mother, you got to sell so much.
Yeah.
Well, then when you got there,
That's more.
you got to do more. I guess that's the reason they got so big. I don't know, they
Yeah.
just kept going more and more.
More factors that didn't put that all the time.
Yeah, and Coca-Cola got fishing in our area, it was 5 days a week when I started. Of course, I moved up, it come to be 6 days. 5 days regular, and
Yeah.
on call on 5 days. And before I quit Coca-Cola, because I just started pastoring the church and all, in the summer, right on Father's Day of that year, '93. Well, in the spring of '94, I prayed, and I knew the Lord gave me the green light to go full-time at the church. But I was right on the verge, because I've already had to spend some midnights on Saturday nights delivering Coca-Colas to stores. And I knew it was going to come to a place where they're going to expect me to work 7 days a week, all that I would be willing to spend on it. And again, you gotta have balance, you know, God, that's why God says 6 days you work, and on the 7th day, rest. The Sabbath day was not, man was not made for the Sabbath, but the Sabbath was made for the man. God knows we need rest.
Yes.
And, you know, this kind of weather is my kind of weather. The problem is, when you get out there in that heat, yesterday, I was like, after half a day's work, I was like a dish rag. I just felt like, man, there was no life in me. I have to watch myself, because I push, because I see something that needs to be done, I do it. You know, I can't hardly stand not to see it get done when I know it's got the pressure. And so, you know, it's just like, we come home Saturday night, and I said, let's run by the garden at Josh's house. I looked at that garden, I saw so much work. I said, I need to go home, and I need to start chopping, I need to do everything. We done got the call about Maury, and Cece come to my rescue. That, I have to say, she come to the rescue. She says, you really don't have to do that this evening, but he said, we probably ought to go over there and visit with them. I said, you're right. I see all this stuff, and it just starts messing with my mind, you know, on it. But I'm glad we did what we did, and God somehow makes a way for everything to get done. I don't know how, and I just take it a day at a time, and somehow God comes through for us. I know it's been I hope this is good for you so far. We'll pray. Father, we love you tonight. We thank you again. I just pray, Holy Spirit, that you would help us to take this to our heart. I believe you have, and we're thinking on it. And Lord, even if some of this stuff don't apply to us, especially about morals, God, that we might know somebody, that we may have a little better insight. Maybe you're teaching us, God. Lord, these things. Lord, again, I just pray your blessings upon each and every home. Lord, you know the needs. Brother Keith, Lord, we just lifting him up. God, Brother Danny, the ones in the hospital, God, we just lifting them all up. Glad you brought Donnie home, Lord. He's doing well. Thank you so much for those things, God, and for what you allow us to do. And God, again, blessing our homes and our families in Jesus' name. Amen.